Anyway, final topic, Trove topics. Going through, I've collected, thank you to everybody who submitted some Trove topics for this first pilot episode. I'm going to go through them now. Just kind of answer some kind of rapid fire questions. The first one I got when I first launched my kind of introductory video for the show, Chelsea Wilkerson at Chelsea from ATX reached out and said, "How do you feel you've grown between day 100, day 1 and day 300? What made you realize YouTube was the next step?" And this is in reference to my day 300 celebration post talking about how I've written every day for 300 days and writing. The next steps for me for the site are video and audio while still doing some writing on the side. For the first one, how do I feel I've grown between day 1 and day 300? I think I've gotten discipline. I think doing it every day, and especially early on, forcing myself to do it every day, and then forcing myself to do it when I felt like there was nothing new to add to the conversation, nothing new to say. Coming up, those days certainly stretched my creative muscles, where I would say, okay, there's no big news story to respond to. I haven't had time to play a game recently because of the time it takes to write some of these pieces. I haven't finished a game. I don't have anything I can review quite yet. So what do I write on those days where I've got nothing to write about? What do I write where I'm just sitting there staring at a blank screen for 15-20 minutes? And so coming up with ideas like a few weeks ago I wrote a trilogy of pieces on characters I love, which I will probably try and continue as a recurring segment every now and then. And I wrote about Terra, Locke, and Celeste from Final Fantasy VI, and why those characters resonated with me, and why they are characters in video games that I love. I don't. It's like I don't want to sound arrogant, but I really don't know if I'm a better writer than I was 300 days ago. I feel like because I'd been writing for years, doing theater and sketch comedy and stuff like that, and just kind of writing off on my own, I felt like I hit the ground running a little bit when I eventually did it. But I'm sure there has been some. I'm sure if I went back and looked at some of those early pieces, I would say, oh, I found my voice at some point throughout there. I love bringing in my analytical side of things. That's in my day-to-day life. I'm a database manager, and I run analytics reports and grants analysis and giving analysis and stuff like that. And so I love putting together kind of projections. And so when I'm talking about NPD numbers or what's selling best on PlayStation this month, those are some of my weirdly favorite moments, kinds of pieces to write, because I'm getting to kind of bring in that business side of my life, and come up with completely off the wall predictions. I definitely feel like I can identify and lean into maybe some strengths, like one of my consistently best performing types of pieces is when I go to an event and cover the event and do like my daily recaps of something, which I'll be doing for PAX here. They'll already be up by the time you're hearing or seeing this, but writing kind of daily. This is what I did today, like effectively just journaling. But people who want to go to these experiences and can't often reach out and talk about how much they appreciate living vicariously through me in those experiences. So I guess I've become better at telling those stories, telling a story and being able to put yourself in those shoes. So we'll go with that. That's a long answer for that first half of the question. As far as what made me realize YouTube was the next step, I realized that actually probably like a month and a half ago, and it was on one of those days, I'm sure, where it was I have nothing new to write because there was no. We're in the doldrums of the summer and there was no news coming out, and so why am I spending 2 hours to write, this piece that 10-15 people are gonna check out and read, when the future of the industry is and has been for a long time video content and let's plays and Twitch streaming, and it's just rare that people don't go to websites and read nowadays. They go to YouTube, they watch the 5-minute video, they watch the review, they don't read the review necessarily, they scroll down to the bottom and see what number is, and I don't begrudge them that necessarily, and there are certainly some people out there that still read, and I'm incredibly grateful for the people who have read my work over the year, but when I go to things like PAX and go to a panel and they say, how do I get in the gaming industry? It's not right. It's make sure you can do video stuff. Make sure you can edit a podcast. Make sure you can edit a video. Have those skill sets. Make sure you can be on camera. You can do video content, because that's what sites can monetize. Everybody's got ad blocker, or if you don't have ad blocker, you're not clicking on the ads on an IGN or on a GameSpot, so they're just sitting on the background. Sites make very little money doing that. They make their money in the video ads that play in the lead up to a video, or that get baked into a video. So that's where the money is, so that's where the content needs to be, effectively. It's just the culture, the post-YouTube culture. So that's when I decided, and it was like, okay, so I want to make this shift, but I want to make an event out of this shift. And so I looked at where I was in my Don't Break the Chain, and it was probably in like the 260s, 270s. I was like, well, I'll go ahead and start getting the equipment now. I'll get the Adobe, and hopefully I'll start being able to learn it. Ideally, I wanted to have on day 300 a big blowout and say, okay, here's video content now that you can see what I'm looking at. But in the day-to-day of spending 3 hours a night writing a piece, and then a couple hours maybe trying to play a game so that I could eventually write a review of that game, I just haven't had the time to do the next steps that I wanted to do. It's also, and that's the other thing, is that it takes a long time to put together a written piece comparatively to a video or just talking into a microphone, and I just didn't have the time or didn't have the patience to go through and edit something. Once I was done, I was just ready to I finished something, I felt good about it, I know I said the things I wanted to say, so I'd hit publish, and then I'd go back and read it a few days later and look and see rife with errors and spelling errors and grammar mistakes, and I didn't like that. I want the grind of pumping something out every day, while great to give me that discipline, I think the work suffered for it as a result. And again, as I was saying, it's not the work that's going to get me hired at places, unfortunately. I will continue doing it. I love doing it. I love writing. That's where my heart is. But if I really want to get out there and work at an IGN or a GameSpot or a Kotaku or something, I need to do more. Kotaku, maybe not. I could potentially get hired at a Kotaku as just a writer, but not going to chance it. Adding these skill sets opens up my my resume. So that's what made me realize YouTube was the next step. It's the hope is basically do something every day mantra, and then just put it in a place where people will actually go check it out, and I can build that audience. Because I have slowly but surely built an audience in the written content, but I'll also put up a video, and that will get more views than anything that I've done for weeks. So it's that's where this all came from. Thank you for the question, Chelsea. Brienne at Miss Movies asks, can we say it, or can we ask about anything, any topic? How about Deathstroke? So Deathstroke got released as teased as some footage this week. Looked cool. I'm excited for Deathstroke as a character. I admittedly have very little faith in the DC cinematic universe because they're just not all of the stuff I learned in theater. They're basically just spitting on it, so much of it, and it hurts my soul when I go and see some of these DC movies. It doesn't mean they're not fun. That doesn't mean you can't like it. I don't. I have issues with the base storytelling style and editing of those movies. But Deathstroke, at least because of his mercenary background, fits in the grounded nature of the world. So I'm fully behind Deathstroke as a villain. I've never really been much of a comics person, but I enjoyed comic book movies and video games and stuff, and so my biggest interactions or experiences with Deathstroke are from Arrow, his season 2 arc, which was great. Manu Bennett did a great job playing him in that. It's a shame that it looks like the movies basically snatched up the character, so we're probably not going to get him back on Arrow anytime soon. And then he was easily the best fight and best part of Arkham Origins, Batman Arkham Origins, that game, and then sadly wasted in Batman Arkham Knight. I'm all for Deathstroke. I feel like it was the teasiest of teases, so I don't really have much to say about whatever the Batfleck version of it is going to be, but I'm hopeful it's good. I'm hopeful it reinvigorates the franchise. We'll see. Greg, aka Mr. Lizard, at Great Mr. Lizard, asks, I'm curious to hear your opinion on how PS Now affects the PlayStation brand. Up until this week, when they released PlayStation Now on computers, on PC, I felt like it was an interesting thing to put older games like on your console, because I certainly don't pull out my PS3, even though I've got it literally right here, grabbing it for the camera. Oh, it's still got plugged in and stuff. Got it right here on my desk for some reason, but I definitely don't. I haven't booted it up really since in probably over a year now, since I had the craving to replay through Fallout 3 last year. So having PlayStation Now and being able to play PlayStation 3 games or earlier games on a PS4 or now on PC, it's good in theory. It's not anything. In my nature and in the nature of this industry, where I'm trying to always kind of be on top of whatever's now and whatever's current, so I can be part of the conversation when the most people are having that conversation. It doesn't do anything for me because I don't have the luxury of really having much time to go back to older games or replaying older experiences or catching things that I missed in that regard. But for people who are more who play at a more leisurely pace, it's great that you could pick up was it Ni no Kuni was one of the ones I think that just got released on it. I have that game. I don't think I ever pulled it out of the wrapping, but I've heard nothing but good things about it. It seems like it would be right up my alley, but I'm not about to go plug in my PS3 to boot it up, and so I would conceivably play it on PlayStation Now if I had the time and the luxury to afford going back and playing old games. But with a full-time job and trying to keep up to date on everything else here with Trove and Trove Talk, it's just not really in the cards for me. In terms of PlayStation brand and people being able to play those games without having a console on PC now, it's nice. I don't think you're going to get too many people doing that. I think most of the people who are I don't think you're gonna get I just don't think you're gonna get much of that. I don't really know what else to add there. Cameron Abbott at Unsexiest Comedy, also at Naughty Gamers, and that's KNOTTY Gamers, asks, who is your perfect video game love interest? I lean towards probably the Final Fantasy IV through Final Fantasy IX era female protagonists. So your Terra or your Celeste in Final Fantasy VI, your Rydia in I had a big old crush on Rydia in Final Fantasy IV, which at the time was fine because she was a kid. She starts out as a kid. I was a kid when I first played it. Now it's a little creepy, but she also does that weird thing where she goes into the underworld, the summon world, and magically grows up really fast. So it's not as creepy that you've got a crush on like a 6-year-old. But yeah, her being the summoner and her green hair, for whatever reason, that did it for me back then. But like Tifa's a great go-to. I was never a huge Aerith or Aerith person, but Tifa, as like the friend next door, that was, those are the girls that I have the crushes on. The friend next door gets me in trouble, but yeah. We can skip over Final Fantasy VIII because screw that game. But Garnet or Dagger in Final Fantasy IX is another solid choice. So yeah, pretty much any of those ladies, strong, powerful women with ambition, goals, and ambition, saving the world. It's always a plus. Zyger at Zyger1337 asks many things. First up, what is your opinion on Domino's cheesy breadsticks? I have none. And Burger King chicken fries. I know you love them. They're okay. They're fine. Whatever. Zyger asks again, and then Alexandru Felker at Lost in Thought with an underscore in the middle of thought after the O asks, how long do you think Sony can go without a big AAA game in the fall since Gran Turismo got delayed? Are they relying on third party too much? I know it hasn't been a problem in the past, but there hasn't been a single one since launch. Can Sony continue to do this? And then Alex added, I got a second Zyger here. Do you think they can especially do this with Microsoft games coming out this fall? This might be a controversial stance, but I think they can. I think they're better off not having big games in the fall, because having all their games, and I did a little bit of research for this question. So you had Xbox. So in 2013, you had Xbox's big fall lineup back at launch, kind of being Rise, Son of Rome, Forza Motorsports 5, and Dead Rising 3 were three of their big titles that came out right then. And then Sony had Knack, Killzone, Shadowfall, and they were supposed to have Infamous Second Son. That got bumped. 2014. Xbox had Sunset Overdrive, Halo Master Chief Collection, Forza Horizon 2. Sony was going to have The Order, that got bumped. Xbox had Halo 5 in 2015, Rise of the Tomb Raider, Forza Motorsport 6, and then Sony had Uncharted 4, which got bumped. And then this year, 2016, you've got Xbox has Gears 4 coming up, they've got Forza Horizon 3, they've got ReCore to a lesser extent. And I think those are the big ones. And then you had Sony with Horizon Zero Dawn and now Gran Turismo, Gran Turismo Sport, both of which have been bumped to next year. I don't think it's going to hurt Sony at all. I think it helps Sony because all of those Xbox... historically, we already can see that it hasn't really helped Xbox, having a plethora of fall titles, because they just got so burned by their pre-launch messaging that Sony has been the runaway freight train, even without exclusives to play. We don't live in an era now, unless you're Nintendo, where exclusives are system sellers. At least not to that extent. The biggest example we've probably seen from it this generation was Halo 5 for the Xbox, and I'm sure Gears will do it this year, but Gears was going to do it anyway, even over Horizon come out at that time, or had Gran Turismo come out this fall. Gears and Halo are at a level above anything Sony exclusive have ever really been. So, of course, those are going to be quote-unquote system sellers. But I think Sony having to push their stuff into the spring of the following year ends up giving them a more sustained push year-round, because there are plenty of things to play in the fall. You have games like Sunset Overdrive or Rise of the Tomb Raider getting drowned out by your Call of Duties and your Fallouts, which people will play on whatever system they have. And so if everybody else has the PlayStation, they're going to go ahead and get those games on PlayStation. So I think Xbox is probably going to, depending on what happens with the Neo, if that ends up coming out this year, I think Xbox is probably going to win the last couple of months of this year. We've already seen them when they dumped the price of the original Xbox down to like $250. They won July's NPD sales. They're probably going to win August with the launch of the Xbox S. Sony, if they come out next month and launch the Slim model, basically on that day with the PlayStation event, there's a good chance Sony will take back September, but then October, November, December, Xbox, because they have a Gears, depending on pricing of everything, they could easily take it back, or the Neo could take it. So I don't think it's game centric these days. I think, at least not to the extent that it has been in the past. Again, unless you're like a Nintendo, like a Zelda or a Mario or a Smash or a Mario Kart are a system seller, but not really. Nothing on very much fewer titles on the Xbox or the Sony side of things. So yeah, I don't think having or missing fall games hurts them, because that's when everybody else go ahead and let Activision and Bethesda and everybody else launch their games in the fall. People are going to buy the systems that they're going to buy those games on anyway. So that's why you see Sony aligning with Call of Duty and with Bungie for Destiny, to really try and, even though those multi-platform games can be played anywhere, they're trying to get them. They're trying to partner and get people to play it on PlayStation, and that's what is more likely selling those consoles than the Order ever would have sold. For example, had it launched in the fall of 2014. Christian at Pixel Brave responded to my tweet saying, "What, is this a real thing? I didn't get a press release about it." Yes, Christian, Trove Talk is a real thing, assuming this video or audio ever made it to the light of day, and I didn't somehow break everything. Hopefully, Trove Talk is a real thing and is really happening. Zyger asks, one last question. If quitters never win and winners never quit, then who was the idiot that came up with quit while you're ahead? I don't agree with the premise of your question, Zyger. I think quitters win all the time and winners quit all the time. So quitting while you're ahead can happen. Any of those can happen, and any of them in adverse can happen. So as far as the idiot who came up with it, I don't know. Probably somebody who was winning at the time in life. Yeah. Frank Bazzani at Irrelevant Jokes asks, "What's it like to be the father to a bunch of idiots on the internet?" Daddy Trevor takes a toll on a person. Having to be responsible for people like Zyger is rough. There's certainly some moments where there's a bit of pride, absolutely. But a lot of times you guys are really stupid, and you say stupid things, And I just don't know how to get through to you. Makes me very scared for when I have actual kids. I hope they're not as dumb as you guys. But I'm sure I'll love them just as much. Brandon at Google My House asks, how much laundry do you do a week? Can that be a question? Because the original tweet was basically saying, hey, I'm doing laundry, but then I'm going to go ahead and record this episode. As far as how much laundry I do a week, I typically let laundry build up for a week or two, and then I go downstairs. I'm lucky and have I live in a complex that has the laundry room is basically right downstairs from me, and they've got 4 washers and dryers, so I can usually let things pile up for a couple weeks and then just get everything done in about an hour and a half. Just fill up 3 of the washers and then do that for a half hour, then go down, switch over to the dryer, let those run for another 45 minutes, and then come back up and hang and fold stuff. So yeah, I do about a half a load a week, if a half a trip a week if we're going and saying that after 2 weeks I'm doing like 1 trip downstairs to the laundromat. Adam Wells at the Adam Wells asks, should Nala be considered a Disney princess? I say yes. I see no reason for her not to be. She is the Lion Queen. So actually, I guess maybe not. Yeah, she wasn't really a princess in Simba's herd or Mufasa's herd. So yeah, no, I just talked myself out of that. No, Nala is not a Disney princess. She is a queen, but I don't think she was a princess in the herd. Sorry, Nala. Sorry. It's not a lioness thing. It's a you just weren't royalty until you were the queen kind of thing. Mario Piaquadio. I was so hoping I was going to get your name right, Mario. And I'm pretty sure it's Piaquadio, but I screwed it up the first couple times. Oops, and I just hit the mic, so I'm really sorry, audio listeners. My bad. Mario Piaquadio at Mario Not Bros asks, when will I guest? Winky face. JK, for real. What are your thoughts on this whole shitstorm that Final Fantasy 15 has been? When will you guest? You're already on the list, Mario. I had you on the list before you tweeted at me. So I'll be reaching out to you in the coming weeks, I'm sure. As far as Final Fantasy 15, I've written a couple pieces on it in the last few weeks. I have long lost faith in Square Enix. In the Final Fantasy 6 is my favorite game. The last Final Fantasy game I liked was Final Fantasy 10. Final Fantasy 12 I was not a fan of. Final Fantasy 13 I hated, and then the follow-ups I hated. So the fact that at its core, this game that's been in development for 10 years is still part of the Final Fantasy 13 universe, even though it's not, quote-unquote. I was looking at the trailers recently, and the things they started showing about that game 10 years ago, and then when they started showing gameplay like 5 years ago, still looks kind of like what they're showing now. So I don't have faith for it. I feel, and I've felt this way for a long time, that Square and Final Fantasy are much more interested in creating very beautiful cinematic experiences in their cutscenes than they are in creating interesting characters and an interesting story and a dynamic story. They're interested in creating very pretty things without much substance behind it. So as far as the game itself, I have very little faith on that. As far as all of the insanity of having a crazy spectacle of an event and saying, we're launching on September 30th, and then coming out a month before that should happen and saying, we're not launching on September 30th, we're launching on November 29th. I don't wish ill on people, but I hope somebody got fired for that, because that is just embarrassing. And I wrote there were a number of things that I think that Square Enix didn't need to do with this game to have gotten it to have hit that September 30th date. You didn't need to patch the demo that you released a couple years ago. You didn't need to create a new demo to release at that event. You didn't need to create the VR experience. And you probably didn't need to start setting the groundwork for your DLC plans and the season pass before you finished, the regular game. So I imagine if resources hadn't been poured into those other things, I feel like they probably could have gotten what they needed to get in this game. Again, as always, I don't know the intricacies of game development, but I'm pretty sure that's a safe bet that if those things hadn't happened and they had those resources devoted to the game itself, we wouldn't have seen yet another delay. As far as why I think this game has been in the works for 10 years, going back to my comment on Square Enix making very pretty games, I think they've been chasing tech for 10 years. I think they had the core framework of the game 10 years ago, 8 years ago, whenever, and then murmurings of the new systems probably started happening, or they decided to say, okay, well, we can get more power out of this system, out of the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, and so they probably went back to the drawing board just to make those cutscenes prettier, and did it again and again and again, and just always trying to make it look as good as it can, without really fixing anything else with the game. So I imagine now that it's on this generation of systems, it's probably a bigger game, and they probably played more with the open world than they probably would have. But I'm guessing most of the delays that have surrounded this game have just been chasing the prettiest looking version of the game that they can get, and finally the investors said, no, you don't get any more time with this. You're releasing this game. We need this game out. We need to. This game isn't going to make its money back. It's been too long in development. I'm sure too many people have been paid too much money for this game to, even if it sells 5 million copies, 10 million copies, 20 million copies. Maybe if it sells 20 million copies, it'll make its money back. But this isn't going to be a game that sells 20 million copies. So those are my thoughts on Final Fantasy 15. That was the last question. Thank you, everybody who asked questions. If you want to be part of the Trove topics, you can always tweet out at SnarkyStarky or at Trove Talk and use the hashtag Trove Topics. Moving forward, this will be kind of a segment where I can discuss these topics with my guest as well. So that's the show. That's the pilot episode of Trove Talk, nearing 2 hours. I talk a lot, apparently, ramble a lot. There's probably a lot of uhs in there. Sorry if that's the thing that drives you crazy. I'll try and be better about cutting out those filler words in the future. But I like to put my thoughts together. And ends up going in there as filler because silence is not always golden. And now I've just stared awkwardly at the camera for a little bit too long, uncomfortably, without breaking eye contact. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up there. Thank you, everybody, for watching, listening, whatever you did. Subscribe on YouTube. Subscribe, like, I don't know where this is going to be audio-wise. I'm sure probably SoundCloud, maybe eventually iTunes. So like, subscribe, review, comment. Do all those things that you do in social media things that now I need to start actually identifying and saying and encouraging people to do. Share with your friends. Do that thing. Help me build an audience for Trevor Trove and Trove Talk. Yay! Doing a little dance. Anyway, thank you, everybody, for watching, listening, whatever you did. I'm Trevor Starkey. This was the pilot episode of Trove Talk, and I will be back next time with hopefully a really awesome guest to hear their gaming history and favorite games and learn about them as well. Until next time, insert closing tag here.